Imagine a world where one of the most potent biological weapons we have against heart disease. A weapon that for, the last decade has required you to keep a syringe in your fridge and actually inject yourself.
Right.
Could simply be swallowed with a sip of water, just a daily pill, right alongside your morning coffee.
It sounds like science fiction, or at least something from the very distant future. But if you look at the medical journals, the headlines from late 2025, early 2026, that future is basically knocking on our door.
Exactly. Today, we are diving deep into Enlicitide. If you've been following the health news, you've probably seen this name popping up everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
From the New England Journal of Medicine to JAMA. It's a new experimental drug that is making some serious waves for dramatically lowering bad cholesterol.
But we aren't just talking about another heart pill here. We're talking about what essentially amounts to a chemistry miracle.
Okay, I want to pause on that word miracle, because usually when we talk about miracles in medical reporting, it's, a whole lot of hyperbole, marketing fluff.
Right.
But looking at our stack of sources today, and we have phase 3 clinical trial data, reports from UT Southwestern, the American Heart Association, and some really, really dense chemistry breakdowns from the American Peptide Society. This feels distinct.
It is distinct. This is the first oral drug of its kind that actually challenges the dominance of injectable biological therapies.
So does the data really earn that word, or are we just getting excited about a slightly better statin?
I think it earns it. But to understand why this is such a breakthrough, we have to start with the enemy.
LDL cholesterol.
LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol.
The stuff that clogs the pipes.
Right. High LDL is a primary driver of atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, basically the plaque buildup in the arteries. Now, for decades, statins have been the gold standard. They're cheap, they're generally effective, and they're pills. But there's a massive problem.
They don't work for everyone.
Exactly. There's a huge group of patients, especially those with genetic conditions like heterozygous familial hypercholesterolemia.
Whoa, that's a mouthful.
It is. Let's just call it HeFH.
Okay, HeF. So let's break that down for a second. What does that actually mean for a person who has it?
Think of it as a genetic lottery ticket that nobody wants to win. It means your body is just genetically wired to have dangerously high cholesterol from birth.
From birth.
Yeah. And these patients need to get their numbers way down to safe levels. We're talking below 55 or 70 mg/dL. But their baseline is so high that even if you give them the maximum dose of a statin, they're often still walking around in the danger zone.
So they're doing everything right, taking the pills, eating well, and their own genetics are still working against them.
Precisely. And this is where the story gets really interesting, because the solution to this problem, it actually started with a discovery right here in the US at UT Southwestern.
I love this part of the research. It's one of those classic accidental discoveries, isn't it?
It really is. So decades after Brown and Goldstein won a Nobel Prize for discovering the LDL receptor, two other researchers, Helen Hobbs and Jonathan Cohen, found something fascinating. They found people with these genetic mutations who had naturally low levels of a protein called PCSK9.
And the kicker.
These people had incredibly low cholesterol and virtually no heart disease. They were protected.
So nature itself gave us the blueprint. If you don't have this PCSK9 protein, your heart is safer.
That's it exactly. And here's the mechanism. Normally, your liver cells have these catcher's mitts, they're called LDL receptors, that grab bad cholesterol out of your blood.
All right.
But this protein, PCSK9, it comes along and just destroys those mitts.
So it basically disarms the liver.
And it creates a situation where the liver can't clear the blood. So the logic was simple. If we can block PCSK9, the liver keeps more mitts, catches more cholesterol, and your levels plummet.
And we did that. We created drugs that block PCSK9.
We did. But there was a catch, a really big one. Until now, blocking it required monoclonal antibodies. These are large, complex proteins, or RNA therapies. The problem is, if you eat a protein like that,
your stomach treats it like a steak dinner?
It digests it. It completely destroys it before it can ever get into your bloodstream. So these therapies had to be injected. We have drugs like evolocumab, alirocumab. They work beautifully, but they come with barriers.
Fear of needles, for one.
A big one. Plus storage issues. They often need refrigeration. And just the general inconvenience of having to inject yourself.
Which brings us to Enlicitide, the impossible chemistry. Because the sources we're looking at describe this drug as a biological missile that's been put into a pill. How do you stop the stomach from eating the missile?
This is where the American Peptide Society source gets absolutely fascinating. I mean, honestly, a little mind-bending. The solution is something called a macrocyclic peptide.
Okay, that sounds like a tongue twister. Decode that for me. Why
Right.
is a macrocyclic peptide different?
So think of a normal peptide, a string of amino acids, as a floppy piece of string, or, loose shoelace.
Mhm.
If you put that in your stomach, enzymes can easily grab onto the loose ends or the middle and just snip it apart.
Snap, snap, gone. Digested.
Exactly. Enlicitide is different. It's a constrained ring.
Like a snake eating its own tail.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right.
Because it's a rigid ring, there are no loose ends for the enzymes to grab onto. It's chemically armored, it's tough, it's stable, and it's designed specifically to survive the hostile acid bath of your gut and actually get absorbed.
So it's hiding in plain sight, chemically speaking.
It is. It's a hybrid. It acts like a big, complex antibody to block that PCSK9 protein, but it's small and tough enough to be a pill.
But designing it is one thing. Making it, that sounds like a complete nightmare.
Oh, nightmare doesn't even begin to cover it.
I was reading the report from the American Peptide Society, and the behind-the-scenes manufacturing drama is just wild. It sounds like they almost gave up.
It was a crisis. You have to understand, usually synthetic drugs are small molecules, simple to make. This thing is huge and complex.
So the first attempt, the first generation synthesis, that took 63 chemical steps. 63.
And the inefficiency was just staggering. To make a single 100-kilogram batch of the drug, they calculated they would need, get this, 170 metric tons of starting material.
Wait, hang on. 170 metric tons.
Just try to visualize that.
That's the weight of a blue whale.
A blue whale is usually around 150 tons.
Yeah.
So yes, more than a blue whale's worth of chemicals, just to get a few suitcases worth of actual medicine.
That is completely insane. You can't build a business on that.
You can't. It would have been the most expensive, wasteful drug in history.
Yeah.
It was strictly impossible to scale.
So what did they do? Just scrap the program.
They almost had to. But the chemists at Merck went back to the drawing board. They reinvented the entire process. This is the second generation synthesis.
Okay.
They cut it down to 43 steps. But the real insight, the thing that saved the drug, was how they purified it.
Right, usually you use chromatography,
Well,
which is basically like running liquid through a really fancy filter, right?
yeah, roughly, yeah. But for something this big, chromatography is messy, it's slow, uses thousands of gallons of solvent. It's like trying to filter a swimming pool through a coffee filter.
Not very efficient.
Not at all. So they found a way to use crystallization. They figured out that 3 specific intermediate forms of the drug would turn into a solid crystal right inside the tank.
So instead of filtering all the liquid, they just made the drug itself solidify and the garbage stayed behind.
Exactly. Think of it like straining pasta. You don't filter the water to get the impurities out. You just keep the solid pasta and pour the water down the drain. All the chemical waste just washes away, leaving these pure drug crystals.
And the yield improvement.
It was a factor of 1,000.
1,000. That is just mind-blowing. From 170 tons of whale-sized waste to a streamlined industrial process.
And it proves we can now manufacture these complex synthetic peptides at scale. It opens the door not just for Enlicitide, but for all sorts of oral drugs that were previously thought to be impossible.
So, we have the biology, we have the chemistry, but let's be real, we've seen plenty of drugs look good in a lab and then fail when you give them to humans.
The valley of death for drug development.
Right. So let's look at the moment of truth. The CORALreef trials, specifically CORALreef Lipids and CORALreef HeFH, published in early 2026.
These are the big ones, the phase 3 trials.
Oh, so did the pill actually work as well as the shot?
The numbers are incredibly consistent. At 24 weeks, Enlicitide lowered LDL cholesterol by roughly 55 to 60% compared to placebo.
That matches the injectable numbers almost exactly.
It does. And crucially, it wasn't a temporary dip. They tracked patients for a full year, 52 weeks, and the numbers held steady. It works, and it keeps on working.
But it wasn't just LDL, right? Because looking at the data, there's a hidden gem in here that might be even more important.
Ah, you're looking at the lipoprotein number.
LPA,
Yeah.
the silent killer.
That's a very fair description. LPA is a genetic form of cholesterol that has this extra protein tail. It's sticky, it's dangerous, and here's the worst part. Diet and exercise basically don't touch it.
So you can be a marathon runner, eat only kale, and still have sky-high LPA.
Exactly. And statins don't lower. In fact, sometimes statins can push it slightly up. So for years, these patients had almost zero options.
Highly elicited.
It dropped LPA by roughly 25 to 28%.
That is a significant dent in a risk factor we previously couldn't really touch without an injection.
It is. And if we compare all these numbers to the injectable antibody drugs, the ones that have been the gold standard for efficacy, they were statistically identical. It is the same power, but in a pill.
Okay, play devil's advocate with me. What about safety? Because whenever I hear new potent drug, I immediately think new potent side effects.
A fair question. The trials were very encouraging on that front. The drug was well tolerated. The adverse events, the side effects, were similar between the group taking the drug and the group taking the placebo. No big red flags popping up yet.
That's what you want to hear. But there's a practical detail I caught in the sources about the patient experience. It's not quite pop it whenever you want, is it?
No, it's not. There is a specific usage requirement. The pill has to be taken on an empty stomach.
And what does that mean exactly? Fasting.
You take it first thing, and then you have to wait 30 minutes before eating.
Okay, I have to be the skeptic here. In a world where people forget to take their vitamins, is don't eat breakfast yet going to be a problem for compliance? It feels like a real friction point.
It's a valid concern. Compliance is always the weak link. But let's look at the alternative. Option A is wake up, take a pill, wait 30 minutes for your toast.
Okay.
Option B is keep a syringe in the fridge, let it warm up, and stab yourself in the thigh every 2 weeks.
Right. Put that way, the toast delay doesn't sound so bad.
Exactly. I think most patients, when given that choice, are going to take the empty stomach trade-off every single time over an injection. It removes that huge psychological barrier of the needle.
Speaking of removing barriers, let's talk about how the regulators are seeing this. Because there was a signal from the FDA in early 2026 that really caught my eye. They granted Enlicitide a National Priority Voucher.
That is a very big deal in the pharma world.
What does that actually mean? Is it just a gold star?
It's more than a gold star. A National Priority Voucher is a program designed to speed up the review of products that fill a significant unmet medical need. It signals that the FDA sees this not just as another drug, but as a high-priority tool to improve healthcare accessibility.
Because it's oral.
Because it's oral. The FDA recognizes that injections are a barrier to care. If you can move a powerful treatment to a pill, you inherently make it more accessible to the whole population.
And that leads us to the market impact. The projections here are staggering. The sources say the oral PCSK9 market is projected to grow to over $7 billion by 2030.
It's a massive disruption. Until now, PCSK9 inhibitors were a specialty market. They were for the super high-risk patients who had failed everything else and were brave enough to do the injections. Now this shifts from a specialty injection to just a daily pill. That moves it into the realm of general practice. It makes this high-efficacy treatment accessible to millions more people, specifically all those who failed statins, but just flat out refused to take shots.
Which brings us to the so what of this whole deep dive. Why does this really matter for the average person or even the healthcare system? Is it just about convenience?
No, it's about what we call the implementation gap.
Break that down for me.
Right now, fewer than half of patients with heart disease actually hit their cholesterol goals.
Yeah.
We have the drugs, statins are cheap, injectables are effective, but we aren't getting the results in the real world.
Because people stop taking statins due to side effects, or they never even start the injectables because they're terrified of needles.
Exactly. There's this massive canyon between what works in a clinical trial and what human beings will actually do on a Tuesday morning. Enlicitide bridges that canyon. It sits right in that Goldilocks zone. More powerful than a statin, way less friction than an injection.
It effectively democratizes the cure.
That's a great way to put it. It removes the friction.
Now, before we get too carried away, we do need to add one little caveat here. The host in me wants to say, case closed, heart disease solved. But the sources are careful to point something out about the long-term data.
That's right. We have proven that Enlicitide lowers LDL. We know that biologically, lowering LDL lowers the risk of heart attacks and strokes. That link is rock solid. However, the specific cardiovascular outcomes trial for Enlicitide, that's the massive study that counts actual heart attacks and strokes avoided over several years. That's still ongoing.
So we know it moves the needle in the blood test, but we're waiting for that final confirmation that it actually saves lives in this specific formulation.
Right. But given the mechanism, it works exactly like the injectables, which have proven they prevent heart attacks. The confidence level in the scientific community is extremely high.
So let's just summarize this incredible journey. We started with a biological breakthrough, finding that PCSK9 mutation at UT Southwestern.
Then we had a chemical breakthrough, creating that macrocyclic peptide, that snake eating its tail, that can survive the stomach.
And finally, a manufacturing breakthrough, turning a 170-ton nightmare into a scalable industrial process using crystallization.
It's a true hat trick of innovation.
It really is. And here's a final provocative thought to leave you with. If we can turn this complex, large, undruggable target, a peptide that used to require an injection, into a daily tablet, what else is out there?
That is the billion-dollar question, isn't it?
What other injectable-only cures are just sitting on shelves waiting for this exact same chemistry to unlock them?
We might just be seeing the dawn of the era of oral biologics. And if that's true, the pharmacy shelf is going to look very, very different in 10 years.
A fascinating possibility. Thank you for diving into all this with us.
Always a pleasure.
And thank you for listening. Stay curious, stay healthy, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, and share.